Hi, my name is Shaihiem Small. I'm an artist living and working in Edmonton, Alberta, originally from Toronto, Ontario, and I work in a variety of mediums, everything from acrylic to graphite to charcoal, as well as tattooing. I would say, I'm a person of Afro-Caribbean heritage. My mom's from Jamaica, my dad's from Barbados. I've spent some time on both islands. I would say that my work is influenced by the flow and the natural rhythm that you would find in Caribbean culture. It's something that I try to infuse into my artwork, even though the themes aren't necessarily obviously Caribbean, but the rhythm is. Yeah, each practice is pretty different. Um, Now, tattooing requires a certain level of precision and laser focus, so I really enjoy it for that reason. Whereas painting is a little bit looser and allows a little bit more freedom of expression and not as many strict rules, so I really like it for that reason. Whereas graphite and charcoal, I mostly work in like portraiture and I enjoy recreating things that I see, but with my own lens put on it, so it has a little touch of me in it. Each one allows me to express something different. Tattooing, it works in the round, so it's understanding how to create a sense of flow and directing the energy on the body. Whereas painting is something that allows a little bit more expression in a different way, in a way where I really get to play with color and composition and not as restricted. So I like it for that reason. The themes that show up most in my work, um, it might depend a little bit on the modality that I'm using. When it comes to things like designs I draw for tattooing, it's a lot more illustrative and it's a lot more within the realm of fantasy. Some of it being lighthearted, some of it being a little bit darker themes, things that are kind of influenced by dreams, my imagination, as well as story, right? Whereas painting and drawing is more influenced by, I'd say, music. Oftentimes, I'm listening to music and I kind of hearing and seeing sounds, and I try to translate what I'm hearing into an image, right? So I might be listening to like my favorite song, and my favorite song is sort of a soundscape that in my mind becomes a landscape. Like the heavy drums could be large mountains, the synths can be blades of grass, and it all kind of comes together in an image in my head that I then try to translate. I would say the diaspora always plays sort of the background of what I'm thinking about when it comes to my subject matter. I've created symbols and things that are very relevant to like my heritage as an Afro-Caribbean person who's descended from West and Central Africa. So signs and symbols and stories that are familiar, including things like Anansi, or various symbols that you can find throughout West Africa. Other than that, I would say it's kind of part of my audience, right? It's a sort of private conversation, whereas the artwork is putting on display for everybody, but there's certain little Easter eggs that only certain people who are from the culture might understand. I don't want anyone to feel one specific thing, but I want people to feel presence. I want the work to have a life of its own, and I want it to be able to interact with people even when I'm not there, for them to look at it and think that this is, in a way, a sort of living thing that has taken up space in the world. Edmonton is really integral for my creative process and my career as an artist because Edmonton is a place where I decide to take myself seriously as an artist. It's a place where I decide to go back to school. get some education, get further understanding, and to not take art as a hobby, but to consider it something that I really do as part of like my life, my lifestyle, and my job. Prolific. Yeah, I think to explain that, I would talk a little bit about how I started off in tattooing, right? So I started off 7 years ago now, and this is when I officially decided to do it. I had always had a relationship to tattooing. I'd always loved tattooing even since I was very young. But I had a friend, and he was of a Nigerian background, and he was showing me some symbols that he was interested in. And these were Instabiti symbols. And he said that he wanted to get them tattooed. Now, I told him that I had a tattoo kit, and he just jumped straight into it. And he's just like, "Oh, you have to tattoo me. Like, we gotta do this." And he really like applied pressure, and I'm like, you know what? I'll give it a try. So the first symbols that I started off tattooing were ancient symbols that come from Nigeria. And it really made me think about the way that we can be represented through tattooing, because oftentimes we see imagery that doesn't directly align with us and our culture, but it is an option, right? And it's an option that maybe not enough people know about. Yeah, I would say it does. Now, I've been drawing for a long time. I'm turning 32 in April. I've been drawing since I was 5, so that's a long time to be drawing. And it's gotten to a point where you develop a sort of muscle memory, and you develop a sort of visual language that you're very familiar with, right? And very fluent in. So for a lot of things, you might have to look at reference, but there's certain things that I've drawn enough times in enough ways where I no longer need reference. So I could sit down and I could draw a chrysanthemum without reference, or I could draw a sword or a gauntlet or certain symbols that I'm just very familiar with, and it starts to be part of the way in which I tell my story through language, and I'm fluent in that language, and that is a part of the visual memory that I've built up over time. Um, and I think that what you do on a very regular basis starts to affect the connections in your brain and how your brain works. So it's very easy for me to work fluidly through creative things. Maybe not always so easy for me to sit down and do math or something like that. It is a challenging thing to negotiate. I think the first thing is understanding that not everybody is for you, not every client is for you, not every artist is for every client. And then two is trying to not negotiate, but trying to communicate expectations early and clearly as possible, because that's often the issue that happens between clients and artists, is that the expectations aren't clearly expressed, right? Now, in the time that we're living in, a lot of people are watching things like Ink Master or YouTube videos about tattoos, and it's giving them some background and some understanding of the process, but not a full and holistic understanding. So people think, oh, you can go to this person and you can get a whole sleeve in one session. And the chances of you going to someone getting a good sleeve in one session is extremely low, next to impossible. So understanding that it's a journey, right? And knowing that as the artist, you're going on a journey with this client, the client is going on a journey with you, and deciding whether you guys want to work together, if you can work together, or if maybe you're better off working with someone else, right? So just understanding if you guys have a similar way of communicating and if you can meet each other's expectations. I think that Edmonton, just like anywhere else in the world that maybe is a smaller place, is a place that has a unique voice, and that voice will be brought to the world stage. But before it gets to the world stage, people are trying to figure out what it is in the here and now. And I think most of us are still trying to figure that out. There are, of course, certain things that Edmonton is known for. Um, including or especially large metal sculpture, which is something it's been big on since I believe the 70s and 80s. Now, as someone who's coming from the Black diaspora in Edmonton, there is sort of a different approach and understanding, and we're coming from communities that usually don't have the time to do leisurely things such as art, right? Because a lot of people see art as something that is not a necessity, not understanding the way in which it helps to feed the soul of a people, one, and then two is to be a marker in time and history and let us know what people were thinking, what people were feeling at the time. And I always feel like if we don't speak for ourselves, other people are going to speak for us. So there's a necessity for Black artists. Like, we have to carve out a space for ourselves. Otherwise, people are going to describe us and say they were doing this and they were doing that and this is what they're about. And we get X'd out of the conversation and we become a subject of conversation rather than people who are a part of the conversation. Community looks like what we're doing right now, working here at the Carrot. I've worked with the Carrot for a couple years now. I've also worked with other organizations such as Ruben Rouge, the EPL, the Art Gallery of Alberta, and it's relationships that are kind of built over time, a communication and understanding that's built over time so that people, they think of an opportunity and they think of you, and also just like the small things that kind of help to build you up as an artist, you know, going out to events, seeing a familiar face and someone who's saying, I believe in what you're doing and I'm here for it, you know, I've showed up for it. And then the ways in which you as an individual can show up for others. I also try to extend opportunities to my wider network as well, right? Because each of us can help the other build something in some capacity. I think that's important for tattoo artists, regardless of race, because it's something that's for a long time been put to the side. Now it's very much on the forefront in the world stage. Anything that ends up on TV becomes a big celebrity thing. But to see it not just as a fad, to see it not just as adornment and decoration, even though it is partly that, but to see it as a living art, right? Something that is going to transform over time as a person grows and ages and as their taste changes, right? So if a person is collecting a whole body full of work, if you go from the early pieces to what they get later on in life, usually their taste has changed as well. Teaching figure drawing exposes people's, I would say, bias, right? Because oftentimes we think we understand things more than we do, and we think that things are simple, right? We take it for granted that we see people every day and we think we know what we're looking at. And when you start to really look a little bit deeper and a little bit closer, you start to realize the complexity of things and people. Something as simple as a face. You look at a face all the time, but you're not thinking about the fact that all the skin and all the muscles and the bone in the face are bending inwards, and everything has curvature. Everything is, you know, convex or concave, and what does it look like to express those things? There's a difference of complexions, skin quality. There's a difference in how the light will hit a body under different circumstances, and all those things come together to make an image, to make a figure drawing. Yeah, I would say so. I think usually as soon as we start with the basics, right? Something as simple as finding the midline of the body is something that I think most people never considered, because they're sitting down to draw someone or something and they're thinking, oh, okay, I'm gonna draw their head, or I'm gonna draw their shoulders, or whatever it is. But you're not just thinking about what you're seeing, you're also thinking about what's not being seen. You're imagining the structure underneath the body, and that helps to build up what is here in the physical. So it really starts from the things that you can't see and works up into the things that you can. I would say the number one thing I hope that people walk away with is a good experience, because if you don't enjoy doing the thing, you won't do it. Like, no one's forcing anyone to do art. It's not really a requirement once you're finished school. Even in school, it's often not taken very seriously. So the first thing I need them to do is see it as something possible for themselves, something that they can enjoy and they can find a sort of catharsis through. And then after that is building confidence and building skill. Who was I as a child? That's a good question. I guess a lot of people might have seen it differently. I think for myself, I was a very quiet, very introverted child, but with a very large inner world. Like, I had a lot going on in my mind. I would daydream constantly, almost to the point of distraction. And I built up my own inner worlds before I ever expressed anything. And I think that's why art was so important for me, and so important maybe for people like me, right? Where it's, you have so much inner workings, but maybe you don't have the boldness or the language to express everything that you're feeling. So you start to express it through art, and you start to understand yourself through art and understand the world. So I'd say it really gave me the keys to expression that I needed. So it was always expressive. I try to go back and forth with that. I try to still enjoy it, because it's very easy once you decide that you're going to be a career artist for it to be a job. You know, even with things like teaching these classes, there can be a bit of dread beforehand of like, oh, do I understand this thing as much as I think I do? Am I as prepared as I need to be? Is there going to be someone in the class who's more skilled than I am, and they're going to call me out on it? And then you have to remember that all these things require play. And if you can't play a bit, then there's no point. If it could speak back to me, what would it say? It depends on the piece, depends on the era or the time that I was creating it, because I think, like many other people who don't express in other ways, a lot of times I was creating art at my lowest. So it would speak a lot to the valleys and not so much to the peaks. But it's different in the different eras of art that I've made, because sometimes it feels victorious as well. So it would be a conversation about the depth of emotions that I've experienced over time. Yeah, so I have two Instagram pages. It's Golden Child with a 5 instead of an H. And then I have a tattoo page, which is G5 Inc. And then people can also email me to g5tattooing@gmail.com. This was fun. Thank you for coming. I had a great time. Peace and love.